Okay, welcome to chapter number 4. It's going to be on futures contracts. And we will start by analyzing the differences between futures and forward contracts. Unlike forward contracts, in the case of future contracts, they are public, they are standardized. That means that the exchange defines several characteristics of the contracts, and they are not custom made for each investor. They are traded on organized future exchanges that set up all the conditions except for the price. And securities have liquid secondary markets that facilitates buying and selling of such securities. Also, they are supervised, and one of the most important characteristics of futures is that they are trading under a clearinghouse. A clearinghouse basically takes charge of all transactions, makes a daily mark-to-market operation so that there is no default on any of the transactions. Also, they are traded on open and efficient markets such that you have a deeper volume and better costs and conditions. Also, the future contracts are considered homogeneous and fungible. That means that one replaces the other with no difference. A simple analogy to that is that, for example, if I borrow from you $20 and I pay you back tomorrow, I will probably pay you back with a different $20 bill from the one that you gave me. It's physically a different bill, but it's the same. I mean, it's worth the same, and it's a $20 bill. Another important difference with the futures contract as compared to forward contract is that several of these contracts like equity, bonds, currency, interest rate, they have the characteristic that they do not need any storage or delivery costs involved. However, some commodities like energy, grains, industrial metals, and so on, they do have some storage costs and delivery costs that need to be considered in the pricing model. Now, when you have forward contracts, you have the case of one wheat farmer, for example, and one bread factory. They find each other, and this farmer wants to get a buyer for his or her crop or harvest in the future. And likewise, this bread factory may need some wheat so they can produce their bread. So in a forward contract, there's some effort and cost in finding each other, a buyer finding a seller, and likewise, the seller finding someone to provide them with raw materials. Also, there are limited number of transactions. It has some customs characteristics of the asset and delivery conditions. And in many cases, the quantities do not necessarily match. So we can have very commonly unmatched quantities. And we have low liquidity, and there is a default, an important default risk, since one of the participants may not fill his part on the contract. For example, the farmer may not deliver the wheat on the agreed expiration time, or the bread factory may say, I do not want the wheat anymore, I won't buy it. So that's a probability that may happen on a forward contract. However, on future contracts, we have the advantage that there are many participants. There are hedgers, there are speculators, there are arbitrageurs. So we have many participants that provide many advantages for the futures exchanges. Now, they deal with the clearinghouse in between. So actually, you are dealing not with a counterparty, but actually with the clearinghouse, which provides no default risk because they do a daily mark-to-market operation. There is unlimited number of participants. There are lower spreads and costs in consequence. Contracts are standardized. There's no need to find a specific buyer or seller for your product. And most transactions actually do not result in actual delivery of the underlying asset. Let's take a quick look at the cost of carry model, which is a characteristic to future markets. Basically, the idea comes from the fact that if you buy anything spot versus if you buy it in the future, there's going to be in between a cost of financing such a asset and storing such asset. So someone has to store this. If you buy it today, you will have to probably store it yourself. However, if you buy it in the future, someone else is going to be bearing that cost of storage. So these costs are added to the model. And likewise, the income, any income coming from the underlying should be subtracted from the price because it's a benefit that the owner of the future contract will not be receiving. So in this case, any income, for example, cash coming from dividends from a share or coupons from a bond are a good example of benefits, of cash benefits. And convenience yield, it's a non-monetary benefit of holding the underlying. So in this case, you can have, or you may have shortages or any scarcity that will drive you to have the asset today versus receiving it in the future. So that's a convenience yield, which is a non-monetary benefit of holding a asset. If we see it on an equation, we will have the risk-free rate. We have storage cost as U, income as Q, and the convenience yield as Y. So we'll have the cost of carry equal to the cost of storage minus the sum of the benefits, which in this case are going to be cash benefits and convenience yield benefits. So to the arbitrage-free pricing model that we use on forward contracts, we will add the cost of carry. This cost may be positive or negative. As we will see in the following few slides, this may have an effect on the future prices as compared to the spot prices. We will do an example now on a very simple example on a cost of carry model and how it's incorporated into the future contract pricing. Okay, in here we will have a look at the very simple cost of carry example. We will assume that there is an underlying asset that has a current price of $38 and a risk-free rate of 4%. And we will consider a futures contract that expires in 60 days. So we will do different cases here. In the first one, there is a very simple case in which there is no storage costs, no cash flows, no benefits, no convenience yield. So this is basically like a forward contract with no cost of carry whatsoever. So in this case, the arbitrage-free price is simply the price of the asset today, capitalized to the interest rate, risk-free rate to the time, in this case, of expiration, which is 60 days. And this will give us a price, a correct price of the contract of $38.25. In case B, we will have a future value of the costs of storage at $137. We're already given the future value, so all we need to do is add it because it's a cost. So we will add it to the cost of the previous element, and we will have a correct arbitrage-free pricing of the contract of $39.62. On the third case, we will have a future value of income. So this is something that we are receiving, we are being benefited by these cash flows, and we have a value of 88 cents. So since this is a benefit or a cash flow, we will subtract this from the price, and we will have a value of 37 with 37 cents. Finally, we have a net overall cost of carry of 234 at expiration. Since this is a net cost, we will have a plus, so we will add it, and we will have a correct price of this contract at $40.59. Okay, now let's take a look at how the mark-to-market process works, which is basically the procedure that the clearinghouse uses to avoid any default on the contract. So the way it works is every day a contract is born. For example, today a contract is born and is agreed on to expiration time T, capital T. But at the end of the day, today it's a trading day, so let's assume that the trading goes along during the day, and at the end of the day, you will do a mark-to-market. So if you have a profit, you will be paid. If you have a loss, you will have to pay that, so that the value of the contract will go back to zero at the end of that day. And next day, a new contract will be done again to the same expiration date. And then this trading date again goes by, and by the end of that day, you will also, and again, do a mark-to-market in which if you have a profit, you will receive that money, and if you have a loss, you will be paying for that. Once again, the value of the contract goes back to zero. It's like pressing the reset button, and then next day, all over again, a new contract is born to the expiration time, and so on and so on. So in this way, the mark-to-market process avoids any accumulation of profit and losses, so there's no way that you can actually default or someone default on you, because every day all accounts are going to be clear and reset. Okay, let's do now a mark-to-market example. Actually, we will do two, one in a long position and the other one on a short position. So let's assume first that we're taking a long position on 20 futures contract. The initial margin is 5 and the maintenance margin is 2. So that means that when we start, we need to put in $100. And if we go below $40, we will need to do the margin call. That means we will be required to deposit a fund, which will be shown on this column here. So let's do some tracking of every day as time goes by. On day 0, all you need to do is set up your account with this $100, and that will be your balance on that account. On day 1, the balance at the start of the day is 100. You don't have any margin calls, so you do not need to deposit any funds. And from the previous day to this day, that means day 0 to day 1, there was an increase of $2 in that contract, so that there is a change in price of $2 per contract. Since you have a long position and you have 20 contracts, your profit is going to be $40. These $40 are added to your account, so you have 100 in the morning. You end up the day with a profit of 40. So your balance at the end of day 1 is going to be 140. Since this number is above $40, you do not have any margin calls. So next day you start with $140. You do not have any margin calls. The price from the contract moved from 60 to 61. That's a gain of 1. Since you're long on 20 contracts, that's a gain of 20 to you. So you get another 20 on your account. You have 160. This number is above the maintenance margin of 40, so you do not have any margin calls. And you start the day number 3 with $160. Then you have a drop of the price from day 2 to day 3 of $7. So in this case, you have actually a loss of $140, and that makes your balance go down to $20. $20, of course, is below 40. So in this case, you do get a margin call that you need to meet next day. So next day, you have a balance of 20, but now you need to deposit 80. So you have 20 plus this 80 that you deposit will bring your account up to 100, which is the required deposit for the margin call. And hence you will have this on your account on day 4. Then you have a change of price of $5 from day 3 to day 4. So since you're long 20 contracts, this means that you're losing $100. And at the end of the day, you end up with nothing. That means that you had 100 in the morning, but you lost 100 in the day. So again, you have a margin call because of course 0 is below 40. So next day, you will have to deposit the full $100 to have your account up and running. From day 4 to day 5, there was a gain of 4 per contract. You are long 20 contracts, so that gives you a gain of 80. So you have $180 at the end of the day, no margin calls. And at the end of day 6, you will have a balance of $220, which is the 180 that you started in the morning with. And you gain $40 during the day to end up with 220, and so on. As long as you have this position open, this process will keep going day after day. Now let's do a short position example. In this case, you have a short position of 15 futures contracts. The initial margin is 6. The maintenance margin is 3 per contract. So you will have an initial margin of 90.
a maintenance margin of 45, and this will look like this on a daily basis. You deposit 90 to start with, and next day you have those $90 in your account. There is no margin call because you're starting your position. From day 0 to day 1, there was a gain of 4. However, in this case, recall that you're in a short position on 15 contracts, so that means that you lost $60. So from $90 minus 60, that means that you, at the end of the day, you end up with $30, which is below 45. So you have a margin call that you need to meet next day. So you bring your balance up to 90 again. From day 1 to day 2, there was a gain of 5. Again, since you are short 15 contracts, that's a loss to you of 75. That means that you end up the day with $15, which is below 45. You get a margin call again. So next day you have to deposit $75 so that you bring your account to 90 again. From day 2 to day 3, there was a drop of $3 per contract. In this case, it's a gain to you because you're short 15 contracts. So you have a profit of 45 plus the 90 that you had in the morning, you end up with 135. You don't have any margin calls. Day 4, you start with 135. There is no deposited funds required from a margin call. There is a gain of 4 per contract. You lose 60, but 75, your ending balance is above 45, so there is no margin calls. On day 5, you start with 75. There is no margin calls. The price increased again $4, so you lose 60 again. In this case, your balance goes down to 15, in which case you do get a margin call because 15 is below 45. So next day you start with 15. You have to deposit 75 to bring the balance back to 90 again. And on this day from 5 to 6, there is a drop of 5 on the price of the contract. Since you're short 15 contracts, that means that you are gaining $75. And at the end of day 6, you end up with a balance of $165 on your account. And so on. If you keep this position open, you will keep doing this process over and over again until you decide to close out your position.
Finally, let's take a look at contango and backwardation, whereby we have a situation in which, in the case of contango, the future prices are higher than the spot prices because the cost of storage and the interest costs are going to be higher than the benefits of holding the underlying. So that will make that the future prices are actually higher than the spot prices. Occasionally we will see on the markets that the opposite occurs. That's called backwardation, in which for some reason the spot prices are higher than the future prices, and usually the case is that there is a benefit, the convenience yield usually, that is higher than the costs of storage and the financial costs. So that means that for some reason, companies, investors want to have a hold of the asset. That's giving them a convenience yield. It could be, again, scarcity. It could be shortage of anything. It could be a competitive advantage. But for some reason, whatever reason, you prefer to hold the asset today. That will give you a higher benefit than the cost of storing it and the financial cost of purchasing it today versus purchasing it in the future. So the way this looks like in a graph is like this. Today you have your spot price. And in the case of contango, you will have higher future prices for that commodity. And in the case of backwardation, you will have a spot price today around here, and the future price is going to be lower because you will have a negative cost of carry. That means that you will have, for some reason, the advantage benefit of having the asset today. So you will be paying more for this versus acquiring it in the future. Thank you, and this concludes our chapter on futures contract. We will see you soon. Bye-bye.